The question of what to do about Iran's nuclear program is one of the most urgent problems facing the world today. It needs to be addressed in a thoughtful, firm and considered manner. But it does need to be addressed with urgency, because every week, every month that goes by brings Iran closer to possessing a nuclear weapon. We have to recognize that the next government of this country could face continuing violence in Iraq and Afghanistan and the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran. And we need to recognize that the current response to Iran's nuclear program is not yet working. The problem today is twofold. First, those sanctions have increased pressure on Iran. They've been too weak to bring about a change in behavior. Iran continues apace with its nuclear program. Its behavior towards its neighborhood is increasingly domineering and destabilizing and deliberately provocative towards the West. The recent episode involving British service personnel and suggestions of Iranian complicity in attacks on our forces in southern Iraq have shown this very clearly. Second, though the incentives offered to Iran to cooperate have been wide-ranging, their impact has been diminished because the US has not always been fully involved. That is why we need a shift in policy as rapidly as possible. Our aim should be clear: to persuade Iran to suspend its nuclear program, come into compliance with IAEA and Security Council resolutions, and return to negotiations. To achieve that, in the next few weeks and months, I believe we need to combine more severe penalties with the clearest possible incentives. Tougher penalties means increasing the extent and the scope of sanctions. Clearer incentives should include a better prospect of talks, especially with the United States. Indeed, we should welcome the fresh signs of American and Iranian readiness to talk with each other. So today, I'm setting out what I believe the British government should do now in order to bring greater pressure to bear on Iran to make the right choice. That must include action at the UN, action within the EU, and action bilaterally. At the United Nations, we need to work within the Security Council to impose or raise the prospect of imposing further sanctions. These should include tougher restrictions on individuals involved in Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, the banning of new arms sales to Iran, and action to discourage new investment in Iran's nuclear program. Within the European Union, the British government should be working with our allies to push for heavier penalties for Iran's non-compliance. We need a step change in the EU's approach. The EU is Iran's biggest trading partner. It should bring the influence that fact brings fully to bear. This could include limiting the access of Iranian banks to the European financial system, progressively restricting new export credit guarantees to Iran, and beginning targeted action to restrict European investment in Iranian oil and gas fields. If the EU looks to the United States to offer further incentives to Iran, equally, EU member states need to stand foursquare with the United States to ensure that sufficient pressure is applied. Then we should work with the US more energetically to ensure that Iran is presented with the right incentives if it chooses the right path. This will not only increase the chances that diplomacy will succeed, it could ultimately open the possibility, however remote, of a comprehensive settlement with Iran. It could also mean holding provisional talks between America and Iran to develop the conditions and framework of any subsequent negotiations once Iran suspends its nuclear program. Bigger penalties, the clearest possible incentives. This is the necessary approach which is now becoming extremely urgent. Make no mistake, the threat is growing. The scale and urgency of our response needs to match it. We need action at the UN, in the EU, and with the US. The world needs to present Iran's leaders with a very clear choice. Either you talk to us, engage with the world, integrate into the international community with all the benefits that that could bring for you and your people, or you face heavier sanctions, growing isolation, and pariah status. Iran has reached a fork in the road. The choice is Iran's to make.